My name is Patrick Brown, and I want to talk to you about suicide. The CDC tells us that the suicide rate is continuing to increase in America. I believe that one of the reasons that the suicide rate continues to increase is because of the taboo, myth, and stigma that surrounds the subject and keeps us from having an honest and open discussion about this important issue. Society's attitudes changed about suicide in the 5th century AD, when St. Augustine wrote that suicide was a crime against God. During the Dark Ages, suicide was considered a horrendous crime. Punishment included driving a stake through the victim's heart and then drawing and quartering the guilty party. Finally, the body parts would be buried at night in a separate location at a crossroads near the village. This was done in the belief that the body's soul would not know its way to heaven. By the Middle Ages, the punishment for attempted suicide was hanging and forfeiture of all property rights for the victim and the victim's family. Some might think we have come a long way since the medieval ages. However, it wasn't until 1961 that suicide was decriminalized in Great Britain, 10 years later in Canada, and it wasn't until 1990 that all 50 states had decriminalized suicide in America. During the Dark Ages, people did not know that suicide was a treatable mental illness. All they knew was that it was a crime against God and should be punished. Today, we know that the primary cause of suicide is depression, a treatable and curable mental illness. Taboo, myth, and stigma are hard things to change. Philosophers and scholars tell us that our language, the words we use to convey meaning, can also be used to perpetuate taboo and create stigma. Take, for example, fear words like danger, extermination, radiation, and contagion. These are warning words. We use them to protect ourselves from danger and disease. For example, Ebola, smallpox, and cholera are contagious physical diseases. It is a wise and good thing that we protect ourselves from these contagious things. Unfortunately, words can also be used to isolate and to stigmatize. Naturally, we would want to avoid contact with a contagious person, their homes, and their families. The word contagion has its roots in the Latin word contagio, which means from touch. Consequently, the word contagion originally meant that the spreading of infectious disease by physical contact with an infected person. In the early 1900s, when the social sciences evolved, like sociology and psychology, they developed their new science using the language, the words of their time. They also brought with them the taboos, myths, and stigmas of earlier generations. Is suicide really contagious? There are many sociologists and psychologists who think so. I maintain that calling suicide contagious is a misuse of the word and only serves to stigmatize those who take their own lives and the lives of the poor families that they leave behind. Isn't it time to bring suicide out of the Dark Ages and into the 21st century? Can't we find a better word to correctly describe this painful condition without stigmatizing it? I think it is time to end the taboo and rid society of the stigma that keeps us from talking about this important issue. I'll be talking more about suicide in upcoming podcasts. Thanks for listening.